Next up, we have the Garma Institute. The Garma Institute is a concept at the heart of Garma and has been the focus of the Yothuyindifoundation since it began. The dream is to provide a central repository of Yolngu knowledge and to make available higher learning to both Yolngu, Gabalanda, in both worlds. This includes VET, tertiary and transitional courses. Since the Prime Minister's announcement of support at Garma in 2023, the Yothuyindifoundation has finalised a feasibility study and conducted widespread community consultations. So to speak to some of those, we have the chairman of the Yothuyindifoundation, Djawa Yunupingu, as well as the CEO of the Yothuyindifoundation, Denise Bowden. So please welcome them to the stage.
Good morning. Good morning. That's better. Just a quick update, but I think Denise is going to do all that. Since the Prime Minister was here last year, he announced 6.4 million for the Garma Institute, and it's in progress now, thanks to him. To tell you more about it, I might hand it over to Denise, our CEO, Yothuyindifoundation CEO. Thank you.
Morning, everybody. Look, we've got a bit of a slideshow for you this morning, just a bit of a presentation as an update, which I think you'll find really interesting. As part of the Prime Minister's announcement last year, we've probably had something like 90 meetings since then. So we've scouted around the region just to get a understanding of the need for education in our region. So we've taken those discussions away from the immediate township of Nhulunbuy and we've gone out into the wider field. So 6.4 million to do the scope and design, and I can say that flights out into the regions are always, fairly expensive. So we want to be able to do this engagement piece very, very well. We want to make sure that we're hearing, a report, stories with a warts and all perspective, which I think is really healthy. So without further ado, could we please put that presentation up? Next slide, thank you. So just a quick understanding, our board, you'll see very Yolngu surnames in there, all Yolngu-led, all Indigenous. So what you're getting is a perspective from a board who has driven this Garma Institute, and I would like to acknowledge too that the Garma Institute has been a vision of possibly 20 plus years now, and so I'd like to acknowledge some of the elders that have been a part of lobbying for the Garma Institute way back when, probably before its time really, a fairly hard concept if you're not aware of the cultural aspects, so very hard to communicate this. Now this slide gives you an indication of the region, and those colour points, those blues, those reds, these are indicative of service delivery areas across the region, and language groups and clans and remoteness. And so to get a perspective of all of these regions is not an easy thing. So we do need to understand right from the get-go that if you're not taking this perspective into the meetings before you're going into these engagement pieces, it's easy to get lost. So the Yothuyindi Foundation has travelled with our board, we've gone into the community, and what we have found is people who are 125% keen for better education, service delivery on the ground, on homelands and on outstations. Now there is some amazing work being done, absolutely. Minister, you're here today to hear this from a Warts North perspective. We understand that there is Northern Territory Government schools in the region. We will work with them, but we want to be able to do this holistically together. We are including the homelands and outstations so that they are feeding into the Garma Institute longer term. So the cultural knowledge and intellectual property component comes up always in the first instance. So what of Yolngu knowledge, these traditional understanding, generations and generations of knowledge, 60,000 years old. What happens to the intellectual property? What we've heard is that it needs to be retained in the region. It needs to have an intellectual bank where it is stored, that is owned by the community, not to be replicated elsewhere or watered down in any way. Perhaps there is some sharing points, absolutely. But on the screen is the mark. And this is a message stick that in 1999 at the Garma Festival, an invitation was extended to the nation, Australian universities in particular, to collaborate for the purpose of education. And I might have mentioned to you it was probably before its time, so people couldn't quite understand what that meant. But it gives you an indication of how long this education vision has been held by the region. Thank you. Next slide. Land tenure has been the first thing that we've had to achieve, and had we not been able to get the land secured, we probably wouldn't have been able to get any further than that. Now, land tenure is always precarious here in the region, but the Gulkula site, which you will see at point A there, is the site that has been chosen. And for you've flown in. Where's that plane again? Oh no, we're going on the car now. So we've arrived at the airport. You've arrived and off you go down that bumpy road. You've lost communications, you've blown a tyre, you've gotten dehydrated, and you've spat out here at the end of Gulkula at the Garma Festival. But had you be going to the Garma Institute, you'd get back on that road again and you'd travel 20 minutes max to point A. You've gone past the township, you've visited Yunupingu on the way, had a look at their beautiful art gallery out that way, you've visited the school, you've gone through the township of Nhulunbuy, and at point A, you arrive at Gulkula. Point B, can we just go back to point B, please? Point B is where the Rio Tinto refinery is sitting at the moment, and it's being curtailed. So at point A, jutting across the other side, is where the Garma Institute's going to be constructed. So you have this amazing message where Rio Tinto, long held history here in this region, is being curtailed, and in its place is the Garma Institute. And the education message is loud and it is strong and it is resounding, and it's not a bad message to send everybody. So I think that's a really important piece here, and we're working with Rio Tinto. They're here this weekend and we'll continue to engage on them. The vision is a Yolngu controlled and focused education institution. And we have to put culture at its core. It's a pride of place and aspiration. It's a blending of two worlds, and it will be a gift to world knowledge. World knowledge. So, we intend fully on starting small, but already this region has international connections, and through our leaders and the amazing talent here in northeast Arnhem land, that's not even a hard sell for us. It's already existing. Next slide, please. So what is the Garma Institute? You can see here, regionally focused needs to be an absolute essential part of this, as is the curriculum needs to be designed by Yurungal people. It must wire in the homelands and outstations so that we possibly could rotate our regional educational offerings. It is definitely a bank to hold our sacred artefacts, some of which are located in international museums and art galleries across the world. It must have gender-specific activities, relevant, culturally appropriate pieces. It is a plan that includes all clans. So it is not just sitting on any one clan's land. It is inclusive across our regions, and it is also extensive across the nation. It must have residential. Here in Arnhem Land there is a shortage of accommodation already. So if we are building a Garma Institute, we must be able to bring people in from homelands and outstations, hold them, and provide workshops and training where possible. The engagement to date started at the Garma Festival since the Prime Minister announced last year's funding commitment. It's not just started at the festival last year. As I've mentioned, it's 2 decades long. So at the festival you can see some of the returning pieces of information that have come back to us. Balanda, learning in a Yolngu way, is an incredibly significant part of what we're hearing constantly. The developing of future leaders and job provisions is also incredibly important. As Rio Tinto shifts out of this region, we have to have the Garma Institute ready to go. We may do that in small steps. Schools and universities are telling us they want curriculum that is flexible and responsive to the needs of the Garma Institute. And one-on-one consultations are telling us again and again we need to be prepared for the mine closure, and we want to map out what regional resources are available here, again holistically together. Yolngu organisations are looking for Yolngu educators so that education is provided by Yolngu people in the first instance. Let's lift those employment statistics. Yolngu courses for employers in the region. A need for bilingual is incredibly important given Yolngu Mata is the first spoken tongue. The town needs to stay lively post-mine closure. Essentially people are very loyal to this region. They do not want this region to die. Also, as Rio Tinto shifts out, you leave a Yolngu community behind who are not leaving, they will stay. Non-Yolngu organisations are looking for basic numeracy and literacy for our next generation so that we've got a strong workforce to ensure that whatever we're pushing through our education system, there is a job at the very end of it that provides people with the skills to have them work ready. On-country learning comes up again and again, and that's actually very strong here in this region. So here the data is telling us quite informatively, taken from the anti-government data and statistics and the ABS, 9 out of 10 people in East Arnhem Land are Aboriginal. Half of all adults completed year 10 or higher. 5 out of 20 completed year 9 or lower. 1 out of 20 has a certificate and 1 out of 20 has a degree or diploma. But this 3 out of 20 with the question mark is really interesting because we're finding that people aren't actually registering in ABS data, they're lost in the system, we can't find them, or they're disengaged from either their education journey or they're so remote that they're not showing, can't place them. So the regional profile here gives you an indication of the occupation and industries in this region and the existing workforce gaps in East Arnhem Land currently. This is fairly new data. But to the right, the top 3 qualifications you can see are emerging from that Learning on Country range of programs, health and aged care, and the community stores here. The bare facts here, 40% of students are Aboriginal in the Northern Territory, 90% of students in East Arnhem Land are Aboriginal. School attendance has been declining. 15% of the Education Department staff are Aboriginal. So what that tells you is we need to do something, and we need to put Aboriginal educators in the classroom. Here are the education challenges presenting themselves as we've gone out to community. Bullanda ways are dominating. Now this is a mining area, so we need to change that. The understanding of cultural ways, perhaps we need to make Yolngu Mata a basic essential tool that people are coming into the region to hear for better communication. Bullanda education has not been working. We'd like to be a part of that education journey and the provision of education. Numeracy and literacy, basic numeracy and literacy keep resurfacing for the reading and writing. Not enough learning on country is taking place. There is obviously more requirement for it. Not enough kids are going to school at the moment, and not enough, therefore, are finishing school. So where are people currently located out of their education journey? There's no jobs at the end of it. However, what is already happening in this region is also very interesting. How incredible is this slide? There is so much going on in this region, and it's ever evolving, and it's quite a progressive region. There's so much going on, and there's so much positive programs here. It constantly changes according to particularly election cycles, incoming programs or ending programs. It's very difficult to keep up with it as it's ever evolving. But look at what we've got here to work with. I mean, it's not a bad problem to have. The Garma Institute is inclusive of all of these programs being delivered, and all of these people have been consulted as we've been going through our engagement pieces. Not once have I heard anybody say, we don't want better education. Not once. So we recognise that there is already training providers in the region, and so the Garma Institute does not duplicate, it does not compete, it will enhance and it will wrap around what is currently there. So this is the education journey that we're seeing from the left. The life skills is where we need to start. And hopefully we'll phase that out over time. And the work readiness is obviously linked to the numeracy and literacy components. The short courses, vet certificates and higher education is obviously where we will get to in an advanced state. However, we're going to take baby steps first so that what we're putting in place initially is meeting that required time when the mine is being closed and the exit strategy is in place. This is the bigger education model that has been devised out of our engagement. So at the top of it sits the Dilla Council, 13 clans. So they need to oversee the way that the curriculum is being designed according to their particular clan boundaries. So those Yolngu knowledges is filtering down. It may split across men's and women's programs. And those boxes there, you might look at those as being faculties in their own right. However, central to all of that are Yolngu teachers and trainers, and they perhaps have a role to head up those faculties. School of Yolngu Knowledges will be the place to learn, to teach about Yolngu culture has to be run by Yolngu, and it has to meet the needs of Yolngu people. So this is an intergenerational transfer of knowledge that we're trying to save here as we move through. So the Garma Institute is obviously going to be a long journey. We're staying the distance. It's going to be a warts-all approach to this so that we can sort through it. Don't be afraid of it. Let's lean into it together. It must include the Northern Territory Government, it must include the federal government, and it has to listen to the community needs and the ebb and flow of how this region actually operates. So here we're putting a regional future together. It is packaged together, and I heard it was a final feasibility report. We're not quite there yet. That'll be due in probably November, December this year. What we're hearing though is fairly compelling, and so therein lies the Garma Institute update since the Prime Minister announced that. Okay. So just one more piece of information. Since those 90 community consultations, we have had the ability to engage an architect of choice, and I'm so very happy to announce today that Troppo Greenaway have been the architect of choice who will help us with the scope and design process moving forward, which will be a part of that feasibility study and product in November, December. So thank you very much for your time today.